Saturn Cube Theory Explained. Part 7, the escape plan, the true light, and the choice. If Part 6 was the reveal, this is the turning point. Because once you accept the Saturn Cube Theory as a mythic map, the question is no longer whether the cube exists. The question becomes, what do you do with it? How do you live inside a system you believe is designed to shrink you? How do you keep your soul awake in a world that rewards numbness? How do you tell the difference between true light and false light? And most of all, how do you escape without becoming the thing you are trying to escape? This is where the story stops being about Saturn and becomes about you. In this worldview, the cube is not only a structure outside you, it is also an arrangement of consciousness inside you. The cube is the habit of living by fear, the habit of obeying before you discern, the habit of waiting for permission to be free. The cube is the identity you wear because it is safe, the persona you perform because it is rewarded, the smaller life you settle for because it feels predictable. That is why the Saturn Cube Theory spreads. Not because everyone believes in Saturn broadcasting a frequency, but because people recognize the emotional truth of the cage. They recognize the atmosphere, the feeling that modern life is a machine that runs on exhaustion, that attention is harvested, that anxiety is monetized, that spiritual hunger is redirected into consumer hunger. This is why the theory needs an escape plan. And here is the first rule of the escape plan. You do not escape the cube by fighting it on its own terms, because the cube feeds on struggle, it feeds on obsession, it feeds on rage, paranoia, and endless analysis. There is a trap inside the theory itself. If you become so fixated on the prison that you forget to live, then the prison has already won. If you become so certain that every symbol is a threat that you cannot feel beauty anymore, the system has already shaped you. So Part 7 begins with a warning. The cube has two doors. One door leads into panic. The other door leads into clarity. Panic turns the theory into a horror movie. Clarity turns it into a mirror. And the difference is not the facts. The difference is the inner state of the person holding the story. The escape plan starts with recognition, but it does not end there. Recognition is only step 1. Step 2 is discernment. Discernment is the ability to feel the difference between true light and false light. Because the demiurge and the archons do not rule primarily through darkness, they rule through imitation. They offer light that is not light. They offer salvation that still keeps you dependent. They offer spirituality that still keeps you afraid. They offer truth that still keeps you obedient. False light always has the same signature. It makes you smaller. It makes you anxious. It makes you ashamed. It makes you rigid. It makes you hostile to your own intuition. False light feels like a ceiling. It tells you, do not ask that. Do not feel that. Do not trust yourself. Do not question authority. Do not step outside the lines. False light uses fear as a leash. True light does the opposite. True light makes you more honest, more awake, more compassionate, more grounded. True light does not inflate you with ego. It steadies you. It does not make you feel superior. It makes you feel responsible. It does not make you obsessed with enemies. It makes you focused on integrity. So the escape plan is not a dramatic rebellion. It is a return to inner authority. This is where the theory becomes almost spiritual psychology. Because in this worldview, the archons are not just cosmic rulers. They are patterns of mind. They are loops. And the biggest loop is this. The system trains you to look outward for permission. Permission to be whole, permission to be calm, permission to be free. But the whole point of gnosis is that freedom is internal recognition. The truth cannot be granted by the system, because anything granted by the system can be revoked by the system. So the escape plan begins with a simple, almost offensive statement. You do not need permission to awaken. Not from institutions, not from symbols, not from the fear machine, not from your own old stories. This is where the Saturn Cube Theory starts sounding like an initiation, because the cube is not only a prison, it is also a test. The box is the test. It tests whether you will outsource your conscience, whether you will trade your intuition for approval, whether you will choose comfort over truth. The system offers you bargains every day. Stay small and you will be safe. Stay obedient and you will be accepted. Stay numb and you will not feel pain. But every bargain has a cost, and the cost is your soul's aliveness. This is where Part 7 brings us back to the cross. not as decoration, not as identity politics, not as moral policing, but as a symbol of a doorway. Because you already made the connection in part 2. A cube unfolds into a cross. In the language of this series, that means something very specific. The prison contains the key. The structure contains its own exit geometry. The cube, opened fully, becomes the cross-shaped net. And that is why the cross becomes more than a religious symbol in this mythic reading. It becomes an image of rupture, an image of opening, an image of the system being forced to reveal what it hides. So what does Jesus mean inside this conspiracy framework? Here's where it gets intense. Because in this reading, Jesus is not a mascot for institutions. Jesus is the interruption. He is the presence that exposes false light. He is the one who refuses the bargains. He refuses to perform power the way the system performs power. He refuses to rule by fear. He refuses to control by law. In the story, he keeps saying things that threaten the cage. The kingdom is within you. The truth will make you free. Fear not. You have heard it said, but I say. That last one matters, because it implies something radical, that the system's interpretation of God is not the final word. And if you follow the Gnostic reading, it goes even further. Jesus is not sent by the demiurge. He is sent from beyond the demiurge. He is a messenger of the true source, not to build a new institution, but to wake up the soul. So when he dies on the cross, what does it mean in this mythic framework of escaping the cube? It means the system did what it always does. It tried to crush what it could not control. The cube always tries to kill the anomaly. The system always punishes the person who carries freedom, and the cross becomes the ultimate exposure. Because the system reveals its nature publicly. It reveals that it would rather kill innocence than lose control. That it would rather punish truth than surrender authority. But the deeper twist is this. In the Christian mythos, the cross is also the place where the system's power breaks. Not because violence is holy, but because love refuses to become violence back. The cage expects you to meet it with fear. Jesus meets it with surrender. Not surrender to the system, but surrender to the true source. And in this reading, that is the escape. The cube can only hold what it can define. It can only control what it can label. It can only trap what it can frighten. But love that does not fear death is uncontainable. This is why in many spiritual traditions, freedom is linked to fearlessness. Fear is the lock. Fear is the leash. Fear is the currency. If the archons run on fear, then fearlessness is sabotage. So what does he died for our sins mean inside this conspiracy myth? Here is one way to frame it that fits your arc. Sin is not just moral failure. Sin is separation. Sin is forgetfulness. Sin is the state of living disconnected from the source. The cage is built out of separation. Separation from God, separation from self, separation from nature, separation from body, separation from truth. So if Jesus dies for our sins, in this reading it means he enters the deepest layer of the cage. He enters death itself. He enters the ultimate boundary that Saturn represents, time, decay, endings, and he breaks its final claim. Not by brute force, by passing through it while remaining connected to the true source. That is the mythic point. The cube says you cannot go beyond this line. The cross says you can. And if you want to make it even more aligned with the Saturn Cube symbolism, it becomes a statement like this. The cube is the world of law and limitation. The cross is the unfolding of the cube into an open form. And Jesus is the one who shows you how to walk through the opening, not by becoming obsessed with the prison, but by becoming loyal to the light that the prison cannot touch. So what is the escape plan in practical terms? This is where we land the plane. Because if the theory stays abstract, it becomes entertainment. But if it becomes lived, it becomes a path. Here is the path in the logic of part 7. First, stop feeding the archons with compulsive attention. You do not have to ignore evil. You do not have to become naive. But you do have to notice how easily outrage becomes addiction. If you are always scrolling, always reacting, always panicking, you are in the grid. The first rebellion is attention control. Not in a productivity way, in a sovereignty way. Second, detox from fear as identity. The system trains people to wear fear like a personality, to call anxiety realism, to call cynicism intelligence, to call hopelessness maturity. In this series, that is the cube voice. The escape plan is refusing to worship fear. Third, reclaim embodiment. The cube wants you disembodied, stuck in your head, stuck in screens, stuck in worry loops. Embodiment is the soul returning to the body. Breath, nature, movement, touch, beauty. The system cannot easily control someone who is deeply embodied, because an embodied person can feel what is true. Fourth, reclaim conscience over compliance. This is where false light gets exposed. False light says obey, true light says become honest. Obedience without discernment is how cages stay standing. The escape plan is learning to say that rule is not love. Fifth, practice inner prayer. Not performance prayer, not fear prayer, not prayer that begs permission, but prayer that reconnects, a returning to the source. Because the ultimate escape in this worldview is not running away, it is remembering where you belong. And that brings us to the last part, the choice. The Saturn Cube Theory always offers a fork in the road. One road is obsession. You see cubes everywhere and you become terrified. You turn symbols into enemies. You turn life into a surveillance mission. That road leads deeper into the cage, because fear is still the fuel. The other road is discernment. You see the pattern, you understand the archetype, and you refuse to be shaped by it. You stop feeding the system your spirit. You keep your heart soft, you keep your mind clear, you keep your life rooted. You treat the theory as a mythic explanation for something you already sensed. That modern life can trap the soul, and you choose to live in a way that breaks the trap. So part 7 ends with a simple question. If the cube is the test and the cross is the opening, then what are you choosing every day? The small choices. The choice to unplug, the choice to tell the truth, the choice to forgive, the choice to stop worshiping productivity, the choice to live with reverence, the choice to return to the source. Because in the end, in this worldview, the escape is not a secret code, it is a state of being. The cube can contain your schedule, but it cannot contain your soul unless you hand it over. And if Jesus is the symbol of anything in this mythic reading, it is this. You can pass through the cage without becoming the cage. You can walk through the opening without losing your love. You can refuse false light and still shine. And the test is not whether you can decode the symbols. The test is whether you can stay free inside the world that tries to box you. Because the cube is real as long as fear is real. But the cross unfolded from the cube itself is the reminder, even the prison contains its own exit. And the exit is not panic. The exit is true light. The exit is remembrance. The exit is the choice to live uncontainable.